Hello everyone, and welcome to the Middle Ages channel. Today we're embarking on a fascinating journey to explore a question that has intrigued historians and enthusiasts for centuries. Why did the age of castles come to an end? For hundreds of years, these stone giants dominated the landscape, symbols of power, wealth, and military might. They were the epicenters of medieval life. But as the world changed, so did the nature of warfare, and the mighty castle, once considered impregnable, began to show its age. So grab your virtual torch and let's delve into the dark, winding corridors of history to uncover the story of the fall of castles. It's easy to imagine a castle as an unbreachable fortress, and for a long time that was largely true. Thick stone walls, towering keeps, deep moats, and strategic gatehouses were designed to repel even the most determined besieging army. An attacking force had limited options. They could try to starve the defenders out, a process that could take months, even years, and was incredibly costly. Or they could attempt a direct assault using siege towers, battering rams, and ladders. This was a brutal, bloody affair with a high chance of failure. The defenders had every advantage, raining down arrows, boiling oil, and heavy stones from their protected positions. Castles were the ultimate defensive technology of their time. They were so effective that building one was often enough to secure control over an entire region. But no fortress is invincible forever. The first major chink in the castle's armor came not from a new weapon, but from a new idea: trebuchets. While catapults and other siege engines had been around for centuries, the counterweight trebuchet, which became widespread in Europe during the 12th and 13th centuries, was a different beast altogether. These massive machines could hurl enormous projectiles, weighing hundreds of pounds, with astonishing accuracy and force. Unlike older siege engines, which were often better at harassing defenders than breaking walls, a battery of trebuchets could relentlessly pound the same spot on a castle wall day and night. Eventually the stone would crack, crumble, and collapse, creating a breach for attackers to pour through. The psychological impact was immense. The constant, thunderous impacts were terrifying for those inside, a relentless reminder that their stone walls were no longer a guarantee of safety. The development of the trebuchet forced castle builders to adapt. They responded by making walls even thicker, building rounded towers that were better at deflecting projectiles, and adding complex outer defenses. For a while, it was a technological arms race with offensive and defensive engineering constantly trying to one-up each other. But another, far more revolutionary invention was just over the horizon, one that would change the face of warfare forever and spell the true beginning of the end for the traditional castle. That invention, of course, was gunpowder. When cannons first appeared on the battlefields of Europe in the 14th century, they were clumsy, unreliable, and often just as dangerous to their own crews as they were to the enemy. These early firearms were slow to load, prone to exploding, and not very accurate. They were more useful for making a loud noise and scaring people than for knocking down walls. For a time, castle defenders weren't overly concerned. But technology advances rapidly, especially in times of war. By the mid-15th century, metallurgical and casting techniques had improved dramatically. Cannons became bigger, more powerful, and far more reliable. These new superguns, like the massive bombards used by the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II to conquer Constantinople in 1453, could fire enormous stone or iron cannonballs that smashed into castle walls with devastating force. A stone wall that could resist a trebuchet for weeks might be shattered in a matter of hours by a sustained cannon bombardment. The very design of the classic medieval castle, its high, vertical walls, made it incredibly vulnerable to cannon fire. A high wall was a big, easy target. Once a cannonball struck, the force of the impact would travel down the vertical wall, shattering the masonry and bringing huge sections crashing down. The age of gunpowder artillery had arrived, and the high-walled stone castle was its first major casualty. The game had completely changed. A well-equipped army with a powerful siege train could now predictably destroy any traditional fortress it encountered. In response to this new existential threat, military architecture underwent a radical transformation. The tall, proud towers and thin curtain walls of the medieval period gave way to a new style of fortification known as the Star Fort, or Tres Italien. These new forts were low to the ground, presenting a much smaller target for cannon fire. Their walls were incredibly thick, often made of earth and rubble faced with brick, which was much better at absorbing the impact of a cannonball than solid stone was. Most importantly, they were built in complex, angular, star-like shapes. These angles were a work of geometric genius. They eliminated dead zones, areas where attackers could hide from the defenders' fire. Every wall was covered by the cannons of a neighboring bastion, creating overlapping fields of fire that made a direct assault suicidal. Building these new forts was incredibly expensive and required specialized knowledge of engineering and geometry, but they were the new standard in defense. The classic medieval castle was now obsolete, but it wasn't just technology that doomed the castle. Profound social and political changes were also at play. The medieval world was a feudal one, a decentralized patchwork of territories ruled by local lords from their castles. A king's power was often limited, and he relied on the military support of his vassals. The castle was the physical embodiment of the lord's local power and independence. However, as the Middle Ages drew to a close, powerful, centralized monarchies began to emerge in countries like France, Spain, and England. These new monarchs had the wealth to raise large professional standing armies equipped with the latest gunpowder weapons. They no longer had to rely so heavily on their feudal lords. In fact, the independent, fortified castles of the nobility were now seen as a threat to the central authority of the king. Kings began to actively dismantle the power of the old aristocracy. In some cases, they passed laws forbidding lords from building or fortifying castles without royal permission. In others, they simply used their new, powerful armies and cannons to besiege and destroy the castles of any rebellious nobles. The rise of the centralized state meant that defense and warfare became the business of the nation, not the local lord. The castle, as a private fortress and a symbol of local independence, simply had no place in this new political order. Its military purpose was gone, and its political role had been suppressed. So, as the medieval period waned, the great castles of old found themselves in a world that no longer needed them. Their military value was neutralized by cannons, and their political significance was erased by the rise of powerful kings. They became relics of a bygone era. Some were simply abandoned, left to fall into ruin and become the picturesque, ivy-covered landmarks we know today. Others were repurposed. Their stone was quarried for new buildings, or they were converted into grand, comfortable country homes for the wealthy elite. The defensive features, like moats and battlements, were transformed into decorative gardens and ornamental features. They became status symbols, not of military power, but of aristocratic lineage and old-world prestige. The castle transitioned from a fortress into a palace. The story of the fall of castles is a perfect example of how technological, political, and social changes are all interconnected. It wasn't just one thing that made them obsolete, but a combination of factors that shifted the very foundations of society. The trebuchet cracked the walls, the cannon brought them down, and the changing political landscape ensured they would never be rebuilt in their old form. They are a powerful reminder that even the mightiest symbols of power can eventually be rendered obsolete by the relentless march of progress. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through history. What do you think was the most important factor in the decline of castles? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the Middle Ages channel for more deep dives into this incredible period. We'll see you in the next one.